You know what's interesting about intentions? They're easy. They cost nothing. They sound good when you say them out loud. They feel good when you write them in your journal, and they make you look good when you share them with your friends. But at the end of the day, intentions don't cash the check. They don't put food on the table. They don't build businesses, repair marriages, or create new futures. You can have the best intentions in the world, but if you don't move, they die the second they leave your lips. Action, not intention, is what counts. Think about it. Nobody remembers what you meant to do. Nobody says, "That guy was amazing. He always had the best intentions." No, they remember the work, the results, the things you followed through on. Because the truth is, you don't build a reputation on what you plan. You build it on what you perform. And that's a hard pill to swallow sometimes, because it forces us to stop hiding behind words and start facing what we've actually done. Have you ever told yourself, "I'll start Monday"? You had every intention to eat better, work out, apply for that job, start that business. But then Monday came and went. Tuesday rolled in, then Friday, and before you knew it, another month was gone. What happened? The intention was there, the thought was alive, but there was no movement. And without movement, intentions become excuses with nicer packaging. Here's the kicker: intentions can trick you. They give you that dopamine hit, that little burst of satisfaction, because you said it out loud or you thought about it so vividly that for a moment it feels like progress. But progress doesn't live in your head. Progress lives in the sweat, in the reps, in the moments you choose to do instead of just talk. And that's why some of the most talented people never reach their potential, because they confuse intentions for effort. And here's the truth: nobody's grading you on your intentions. Life isn't waiting around for you to make up your mind. The bills keep coming whether you intend to pay them or not. Time keeps ticking whether you intend to use it wisely or not. Relationships either grow or wither depending on what you actually do, not what you wish you'd done. That's the gap between who you are and who you want to be, the space between intention and action. Now, I'm not saying intentions are worthless. They're the spark, they're the seed, but seeds don't grow sitting in a packet on the shelf. They've got to be planted, watered, exposed to light. That's action. Without that, the seed just stays potential. And some of you are walking around with a pocket full of seeds, waiting for the right time to plant them. Let me tell you, there is no right time. The right time was yesterday. The next best time is right now. So here's what I want you to take away. Stop giving yourself credit for what you plan to do. Start giving yourself credit for what you actually did. Did you show up? Did you send the email? Did you make the call? Did you take the step? Because that's where the power is. The scoreboard of life doesn't record your intentions, only your actions. And the more you act, the more you realize something important. You don't need perfect plans to make progress. You just need the courage to take one step, then another, then another. That's how you turn intentions into impact, and that's how you move from dreaming to doing. Because in the end, intentions may inspire, but only action changes your life. The biggest mistake people make when they think about change is believing it has to be massive right away. We convince ourselves that unless it's big, bold, and dramatic, it doesn't count. We wait for the perfect conditions, the perfect timing, the perfect plan. And while we're waiting, nothing happens. Weeks turn into months, months turn into years, and the life we want keeps slipping further and further out of reach. The truth is, big transformations don't come from giant leaps. They come from small, consistent steps that add up over time. Think about how water shapes rock. It's not one giant wave that carves the canyon. It's the steady drip, the constant flow, the little by little pressure that changes the shape of something solid. That's what small actions do to your life. They may not look powerful in the moment, but give them time and consistency, and they'll rewrite your entire story. We love the idea of overnight success, but let me tell you something. Overnight success is just the public seeing the results of years of small, hidden steps. The writer who finally publishes a bestseller, they spent nights writing when no one was watching. The athlete who wins the championship, they did the early mornings, the extra reps, the practice nobody applauded. What looks like a breakthrough to the world is really the result of small steps stacked on top of each other until they created something unstoppable. Here's the problem with waiting for the perfect time: it never comes. There will always be a reason to delay, always a reason to hold off, always something in the way. But if you can learn to value progress over perfection, you'll start to see that small moves beat no moves every single time. 5 minutes at the gym is better than 0. Reading 1 page a day is better than none. Making 1 phone call is better than staying stuck in your head. Small steps don't just add up. They keep you in motion, and momentum is everything. And momentum doesn't come from talking about what you want. It comes from doing. When you take a small step, you build confidence. You tell yourself, I can do this. That self-trust compounds. 1 step leads to another, then another. And before you know it, you're not thinking about how far you have to go. You're amazed at how far you've already come. That's the power of small, consistent action. Here's the thing: small steps are also sustainable. Anyone can make a giant push once in a while, but if you burn out after the big effort, you end up back where you started. Small, steady moves may not feel glamorous, but they keep you going. They fit into your life, they build discipline, and they create habits that stick. It's not about doing everything today, it's about doing something today, and repeating it tomorrow. So don't underestimate the little choices. Waking up 15 minutes earlier, choosing to listen instead of react, putting away $5 instead of spending it, sending that email, picking up that book. These things may seem small, but they're seeds, and seeds don't stay seeds. They grow. You just have to keep planting. It's easy to get overwhelmed by how far you want to go, but remember this: you don't climb a mountain in one giant leap. You climb it 1 step at a time. So stop waiting for the perfect conditions. Start with what you have, where you are, right now. Because small steps, taken daily, create the big shifts that change your life forever. Because in the end, it's the little things done consistently that create the biggest transformation. One of the biggest lies we tell ourselves is that we need to have everything figured out before we start. We wait for perfect clarity, perfect certainty, and perfect answers, as if one day the clouds will part and a clear map of our future will just appear. But here's the reality: clarity doesn't come before action, it comes from action. You don't figure out the road by standing still and staring at the horizon. You figure it out by taking steps and adjusting along the way. Think about riding a bike as a kid. You didn't read a manual, analyze diagrams, or study the mechanics of balance before you climbed on. You just tried. You wobbled, you fell, you scraped your knees, and little by little, your body learned what balance felt like. Clarity came because you acted. If you had waited until you completely understood how balance worked, you'd still be standing on the sidewalk holding the bike. Life works the same way. We get stuck in what people call analysis paralysis. We plan, we research, we gather advice, and we tell ourselves we're preparing. But too often, preparation becomes procrastination in disguise. The truth is, you can only plan so much. Eventually, you have to step into the unknown, and that's where the real answers live. Action reveals what thinking alone never can. When you act, you test reality. You see what works and what doesn't. You discover strengths you didn't know you had, and weaknesses you can now work on. You uncover opportunities that only appeared once you moved forward. None of that would have shown up if you had stayed still, waiting to feel ready. Some people don't chase their dreams because they say, I don't know where to start. But the secret is, you don't need to know the whole plan. You just need to know the first step. Send the email, make the call. Sign up for the class, write the first sentence, whatever it is, just start. Because once you're in motion, the path starts to reveal itself. It's like driving at night. You don't need your headlights to light up the entire road, you just need them to show you the next few feet. And as you keep moving, the next stretch becomes clear. Clarity also comes from mistakes, and I know that sounds uncomfortable, but mistakes are information. They show you what doesn't work, which is just as valuable as discovering what does. Every misstep teaches you something, builds resilience, and points you closer to the right direction. But you can't collect those lessons if you're standing still. You can't fail your way forward if you never take the shot in the first place. And let's be real, waiting until you know everything is just fear wearing a mask. It's fear pretending to be wisdom, fear disguised as caution. But courage is not the absence of fear. It's the decision to move anyway. And the beautiful part is, the more you move, the less scary it feels. Because now you're not stuck in your head. You're in the process, learning, adjusting, growing. So stop telling yourself you need more time, more research, more certainty before you begin. You don't. What you need is movement, because clarity isn't found in the thinking, it's found in the doing. Because in the end, you don't need all the answers to start. You just need to start to find the answers. Fear has this strange way of growing when we sit still. The longer we wait, the louder it gets. The more we replay scenarios in our head, the bigger the monster becomes. We start imagining everything that could go wrong, and before we know it, we've talked ourselves out of trying. That's because fear feeds on inaction. It multiplies in silence, in hesitation, in delay. But the moment you take action, something shifts. Fear doesn't disappear, but it loses its grip. It shrinks because momentum builds confidence, and confidence makes fear look smaller than it once did. Think about the times you were afraid to do something. Maybe it was speaking in front of a group, having a hard conversation, or stepping into a new opportunity. Before you acted, the fear was overwhelming. Your mind raced, your heart pounded, your body resisted. But once you started, once the words left your mouth, once your feet hit the stage, once you walked into the room, the fear began to fade. Why? Because action exposes fear for what it is, a story in your head. And most of the time, the story is scarier than reality. Fear convinces you that you're not ready, that you'll embarrass yourself, that you'll fail. But fear doesn't have evidence. It only has imagination. And the only way to test imagination against reality is to act. When you take a step, you give yourself proof. You show yourself, I can do this. And that proof is stronger than fear's voice. It's like standing at the edge of a cold pool. You dip your toe in, and the water feels freezing. You pull back, hesitate, build up the anxiety. But the longer you stand there thinking about it, the harder it gets, the fear grows. Yet the second you just jump in, your body adjusts. You realize it's not as bad as you thought. Action doesn't erase the cold, but it takes away the power of the hesitation. That's how life works too. Here's the truth. You can't think your way out of fear. You can only act your way through it. You can't wait until you're not scared anymore, because courage isn't waiting for fear to leave its moving in spite of it. The people you admire, the ones who look fearless, they're not without fear. They just learned the secret. Fear gets quieter the moment you move, and when you take action, you gain something priceless, momentum. Momentum is what carries you past the hesitation, past the self-doubt, past the excuses. Once you're in motion, you don't have as much time to overthink. Your brain shifts from what if to what now, and that switch is powerful because it keeps you focused on progress instead of paralysis. It's not about erasing fear completely. Fear will always show up when you step into something new, something bigger, something that matters. But fear is not a stop sign. It's just a signal that you're pushing into growth. The trick is to stop letting it dictate your choices, and the way you do that is by acting faster than fear can talk you out of it. So the next time you feel fear creeping in, don't wait for it to leave. Don't sit in silence letting it grow stronger. Move, do the thing, say the words, take the step, because every time you act, you prove to yourself that fear is not the driver. You are, because in the end, fear loses its power the second you choose action over hesitation. There's a line that separates people in this world, and it's not talent, it's not intelligence, it's not even resources, it's action. Everyone has dreams, everyone has visions of what their life could be, of what success might look like for them. We all talk about someday. Someday I'll start that business, someday I'll get in shape, someday I'll fix that relationship. But here's the reality. Someday is not on the calendar. The only people who move forward are the ones who turn someday into day one. And that shift doesn't happen with talk. It happens with action. Dreamers are everywhere. You hear them at coffee shops. You see them on social media. You know them in your own family. They've got a list of great ideas. They can paint a picture of what their future will look like, but it stays there, in words, in conversation, in imagination. Doers, on the other hand, are fewer. They're the ones who are willing to take the hit, willing to get uncomfortable, willing to fail forward, and that's why they end up standing in places the dreamers only talked about. Talk is cheap. It costs nothing to tell people about your goals. You'll get nods, you'll get encouragement, you'll get that temporary high of sharing your vision, but when the lights go out, when the audience leaves, the only thing that counts is whether you acted on it. Because action is what separates someone who wants it from someone who gets it. It's easy to admire people who have achieved great things, but what we don't see are the thousands of small, unglamorous steps they took to get there. The sacrifices, the discipline, the long nights, the early mornings, that's the difference between talking about a goal and actually reaching one. Doers are willing to take those steps when nobody's clapping, when nobody's watching, when nobody even believes in them yet. That's what gives them power, and here's the hard truth. Dreamers often get stuck waiting for permission. They wait for someone to validate their idea, for someone to say, yes, you're ready. Doers don't wait for permission. They understand that no one is coming to hand them the life they want. They have to build it themselves, one action at a time. If you're honest with yourself, you'll see this pattern in your own life. How many times have you told yourself what you want, and how many times have you acted on it? Because at the end of the day, we are not defined by what we hope for, we're defined by what we're willing to do about it. The good news is, anyone can cross that line from dreamer to doer. It doesn't require perfection. It doesn't require knowing everything, and it doesn't require having it all together. It just requires starting. And once you start, you'll notice the gap between you and the dreamers gets wider and wider. Not because you're better, but because you moved. Every step you take puts you in a different category. The category of people who don't just talk about their dreams, they live them. The category of people who don't wait for the right time, they create it. The category of people who don't settle for someday, because they know the only day that matters is today, because in the end, talkers make promises, but doers change the world. When you act, you're not just moving toward a goal. You're shaping who you are. Every action is a vote for the kind of person you believe yourself to be. That's why action doesn't just create results, it creates identity. You start to see yourself differently, and that shift is powerful because the way you see yourself determines the standards you set, the boundaries you protect, and the life you build. Think about it this way. When you keep promises to yourself, even the small ones, you build trust with yourself. And trust is the foundation of confidence. If you say you're going to wake up early and you do it, that's not just an early morning, it's evidence. If you tell yourself you'll make it to the gym and you follow through, that's not just a workout, it's a message to yourself that your words mean something. Over time, those small acts pile up into self-respect. And nothing creates power like self-respect. But when you don't act, when you constantly say one thing and do another, you erode that trust. You start to believe your own excuses. You tell yourself, I'll change. But deep down, you don't believe it anymore because your actions have proven otherwise. That disconnect between words and actions eats away at confidence. And that's why some people feel stuck. Not because they lack ability, but because they've stopped believing themselves. The good news is, you can flip that script at any time. Identity isn't fixed, it's built through repetition. You don't become disciplined by wishing for it. You become disciplined by doing disciplined things. You don't become courageous by hoping for it. You become courageous by acting in the face of fear. And each time you do, you strengthen that identity. The action proves the belief, and the belief fuels the next action. It's a cycle, but it starts with the first move. The people you admire didn't become who they are overnight. They built their identity brick by brick, choice by choice. Their confidence isn't some magical gift. It's a reflection of the actions they've taken consistently. And here's the key, that same process is available to you. It's not reserved for special people. It's built into the way life works, and let's be clear, this isn't about perfection. You don't need to act flawlessly every single time. You're human, you'll stumble, you'll miss a step, but what matters is that you keep showing up. Consistency is stronger than perfection. You can fail today and still act tomorrow. You can slip back and still step forward again. And every time you do, you rebuild that trust with yourself. That's why action is the real power. Not because it just moves you closer to your goals, but because it makes you into the kind of person who doesn't quit on themselves. And once you see yourself that way, everything changes. You stop begging for validation because you validate yourself. You stop lowering your standards because you know what you're worth. You stop waiting for someone else to lead your life because you've already taken ownership of it. So if you want confidence, act. If you want self-respect, act. If you want to become the kind of person who walks into a room and doesn't have to say a word for people to notice the strength in you, act. Because identity isn't what you declare, it's what you prove through your choices. Because in the end, every action you take is shaping the story of who you are becoming.